The latest in pro wrestling, sports, and entertainment. RJ Infusino, longtime pro wrestling fan and multimedia professional. Colin Smith, former professional wrestler. And Maxine Hora, a pro wrestling mega fan. We're bringing the heat. Welcome to the Heat Seeker Podcast. In late March 2026, during an indie show at the Berwyn Eagles Club, there was a post-show altercation involving a wrestler and a fan. Some people claimed there was a stabbing. Others said no knife was involved at all. A video surfaced showing a fight, but no clear weapon was seen. Law enforcement did become aware of the incident. But as of what's been publicly reported thus far, there is no clearly confirmed police report filed by a witness that verifies a stabbing occurred. Because of the conflicting stories, it turned into a huge controversy in the local wrestling scene. The Berwyn Eagles Club isn't just another venue. It is a cornerstone of the Chicago independent wrestling scene. For 20-plus years, they've hosted large wrestling shows for various independent promotions. This isn't just a venue change. It may be the end of an era for Chicago wrestling.
Let me see here, because I do have some notes on that Berwyn thing. I couldn't even believe. I didn't realize that this was like a like how big that ended up getting. It's nuts.
I watched the video when the wrestlers were punching the fan, and
Yeah,
you could tell
that's
in
the
the
video I saw.
and you can tell with the video they're throwing work punches. They're not throwing shoot
Yep.
punches.
Yep. That's what I noticed. I noticed it was not, they weren't clean shots, and they're like going over his head, right?
Mhm.
They weren't going on him. Now, granted, he's getting roughed up a little bit because that's the nature of the beast on that, but he wasn't getting, like, you could tell a lot of it was they're swarming him so that it's giving the impression that like he's getting like bombed and stuff.
Yeah,
Because they wanted
and
the situation to look as real as possible and stuff. Plus, why wouldn't you run away at that point? Why would you these guys are like twice your size. This guy didn't look all that big,
no.
but yeah, he should have been out of there. I don't know why if it were me, I would not be sticking around. Why would I? This is a done deal. I would be so out of there.
And I think you could tell with the video when they're swarming him and giving that illusion, they're also trying to get him out so he can run around to the back door.
Yeah.
And get back into the locker room.
Yeah, dude. I don't care how disoriented someone is. In fight or flight, you typically get the actual fuck out of there. If a bunch of people are coming towards you.
The thing was at work. The guy wasn't even drunk, I'm sure.
No, he wasn't drunk. So this resulted in the Berwyn Eagles Club just not doing wrestling shows at all anymore.
Canceling all shows until further notice.
That is crazy because, the Chicago indie scene, from your experience, the Chicago indie scene is one of the largest indie scenes in regards to publicity, right?
The nature of the beast on the independent level, Chicago is one of the biggest next to Texas and Florida and New York.
And the Midwest, all of it spreads like wildfire. Something big happens in the Chicago wrestling scene, everyone's going to end up knowing about it,
Yeah.
That's why NWA continually does independent shows here. That's why a lot of people are often scouted in the Chicagoland area. And
a lot of the online journalists for Wrestling Report, PW Insider, The Torch, any of those wrestling publicity magazines or articles, anything newsworthy, a lot of those writers are in Chicago.
Wow.
That's why it gets out so fast.
I didn't even realize that. The journalist side, it is they probably don't have a easy job in regards to how they can go about reporting because it's like the second you find out about something, and this situation's no exception, right? Second you find out about something, you're just going about like what has been said, and you have to lean into it. But then all of a sudden they find, wait, this wasn't the case. This was, this is actually how the situation happened.
Yeah,
So
and this isn't the first time this company has done this. Let's just throw it out there. It's Ruthless Pro Wrestling, a
yep,
deathmatch company out of Ohio. And that show
yeah.
was their last show for good. So not
Oh,
only
was
are you
it
closing up,
really?
yeah, not only was it your
Oh
last show with the company,
no.
but you took down one of the most prominent venues in the Chicago wrestling scene and fucked over every promotion out here and pissed off a lot of the guys.
Well, I had heard that this actually puts into question liability and licensing, which I didn't realize licensing was as big of a deal. But in this situation, the Berwyn Eagles Club evidently was found to be more liable because they did not actually have the proper licensing for that kind of entertainment. So they couldn't, like legally, they couldn't host MMA or pro wrestling or those kinds of situations where it's a combat based liability or performative liability. That kind of entertainment they're not supposed to host. And I'm sure there's a lot of places where that is the case as well, because a lot of pro wrestling is hosted in like bars and stuff, and they think to themselves, oh yeah, dude, I want to, like, my stage and stuff is all set up, like I can host pro wrestling, why not? um but a situation like this occurs, and then the legality and the liability starts to become in the forefront, especially when the town has to speak publicly on it. That's when you know it's a pretty rough situation.
I
If it
mean,
if they
Chicago, I mean, not just Chicago, but Illinois as a whole has no boxing commission that regulates wrestling. It closed down in
no,
2009. So
yep,
you really don't need a license to do something like that.
like, and I mean that becomes the biggest struggle when you are trying to set up any form of entertainment in the Chicagoland area. There's a demand for it. That's the tricky part about it. There's such a demand for pro wrestling and for these kinds of entertainment, but like on the financing and legal matters surrounding it, people don't want a back end. People don't want to fund it, because if they are then getting involved in the Chicago legal scope, I mean, they're screwed. And those that can afford it, like they don't care to be involved in that. They would much rather be involved in like industrial based things like property management and stuff like that. They don't want to be involved in entertainment because they're fighting a losing battle. They don't have enough to lose in order to do it.
Yeah, and I think in entertainment, it's a huge ego trip and or ego ran business. It's one of the reasons I'm happy to be out of it. One
Yeah.
of the reasons I'm happy to be able to come to terms with my retirement, because that was one thing I was always struggling with was, I'm retired, but I still feel like I got another run left in me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I'm sure.
with the legality part of it all, it is you're beating your body up every
Yep.
time you get in the ring. You get hurt, you I mean, it's voluntarily an injury that you cause yourself because no one told you to get in the ring. You did
Yep.
it on your own accord.
Yep.
But with how the US legal system is, there's always some way that they can find a way to get money out of them, because not every lawyer out here is Jerry McDivitt, able to
No.
save Vince and
No.
WWF from everything.
Right. Well, and it's interesting you bring that up, because an ongoing issue in both, the pro wrestling scope, boxing, MMA, the UFC has been very present in media for this, and that's medical insurance and what kind of insurance should a larger organization that hosts that much people that put their body at risk. It's not even a matter of should they give them insurance. It's what kind of insurance should they have? Because granted, right, the excuse here is that, or I guess I should say the tricky situation that we find ourselves in is these people are individual performers signed into a contract. They are pretty much under a 1099 if they're on the larger scope. They are not W-2 employees. They are not, they're not registered employees. They are just performers signed onto a contract. So that logic presents itself as I cannot give these people insurance as if they were an employee because, that's not what they are. However, right, that doesn't mean it's impossible for a company like the UFC to provide medical insurance for their performers, right?
Yeah, and you look at the budget TKO's got and their profit every quarter. You can easily give everyone their insurance.
Give them all the Saudi money, come on. Like, this is getting to a point, though, and I mean, people have spoken out against Dana White. Back when Vince was in charge, people spoke out against Vince. With Triple H, I think still people will speak out against just the practices when it comes to people's safety and things of that nature. Genuinely speaking, I believe that if you are a performer like that, of course you go into this knowing the risk, right? But if you're making someone that much money to put yourself at risk, it begs the question, like, shouldn't you then have a responsibility to maintain their health? If you have enough of that responsibility to where you can restrict them from going out because they're not physically able, why do you then feel like you don't have to provide the most amount of care possible? Like, why do you feel like you can't bankroll their care so that they can keep performing? Now, the UFC is a big one to me because this is a sport where, like, someone is actually trying to maim you in this ring. They are trying to hurt you, like, with intent.
Yeah, like you guys are getting busted open left and right, and that's all intentional. It's not accidental.
Like, I think, genuinely speaking, the UFC and any MMA federation, possible Bellator, whatever, they have a responsibility to ensure that these fighters, granted they are contracted people, but these fighters that fight at their hosted events, mind you that, like, in this circumstance, back to, the Berwyn Eagles situation, they felt as if they were liable, or there's a potential liability involved with hosting a pro wrestling event, right? The UFC and the WWE don't feel like they have liability because they have it written in their contracts, right? Like, well, I'm not contractually obligated to ensure good health for these people. They get paid enough, but really they don't. Like, not all the wrestlers and not all the UFC fighters are paid enough to where they can sustain their well-being and their health. They are put to their own devices to what health insurance they pick and all that stuff, but at the same time, we know the health insurance scope. I especially, unfortunately, because I have my health insurance through the healthcare marketplace. I work 2 part-time jobs. Those people are fallen actually into that same circumstance. They have to pick their own insurance because they are 1099 employees. Granted, if they are W-2 employees, then that's a whole other situation, but they have to pick their insurance. They have to pick, you know, these plans that have skyrocketed like dramatically.
Yeah, I remember I was paying $82 a month for health insurance.
Now
Then
it's
it
probably
hit
200.
no, it went up to $412.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And that's an employee-based insurance or?
No, I got my own health insurance before I got the benefits offer.
Oh, okay. That
So
makes sense. So
after that,
then you
yeah,
got
I dropped
benefits.
them, got my job at the private ambulance company, and I got benefits through them too. So
That's awful though. I mean, I mean, that's just awful. But kind of circling back to the Berwyn Eagles situation, I had looked into it. The biggest tells of how this was a work is there's no formal police report at all, and yet there was police statements, right? No formal police
yeah,
report was made. Uh, there's no witness statements on what had occurred at the event. That should be a tell, right? Like if there's no witness statement as to what had occurred, how can anyone be sure that this circumstance had even occurred, right? Supposedly, Cruel, the wrestler, and this fan had an altercation prior, or at least during the event. Why is there no evidence that suggests that such a thing had occurred? Don't you think like people would record it on their phones and stuff like that?
yeah. I mean,
They
you got
recorded the
guys.
backstage incident, but
Yeah, you got guys around the ring with cameras. It would have been
all the
recorded at some
time.
point. Yeah, there's always a recording camera in pro wrestling.
Yeah, always. There was none of that. It's to me, I mean, it's such a tell that this, in fact, was a work. But even with it being a work, you present a liability. Like the Berwyn Eagles are put in a difficult situation where they had no idea what was going on. No one informed them of this angle. So they're like, well, can't do this anymore.
Yeah, and out of all the angles you could do between a fan and a wrestler, why the fuck would you make it a knife and a stabbing?
Yeah, I thought that was a little interesting. Like,
Like
wouldn't you
you see what's
think?
going on in Chicago with how many knife attacks are happening. Why the fuck would you make this your angle?
Not even
It's already
just
a
like,
touchy subject.
not even like knives. I mean, people are getting killed left and right, whether
Getting
it's
lit on
like
fire.
getting shot. Yeah, lit on fire. Yeah, that was a thing, right? Like on the
Mhm.
train station. I can't even believe that. And that really, I mean, to me, that has nothing to do with people made that about immigration, but it has nothing to do with that. Psychologically, people are just
Yeah.
messed up. But that being
Eh,
said,
and also with that, you got all these different angles you can use. Like I said, why make it a knife and a stabbing? That's already
that's
gonna
just
get
bizarre.
it's gonna get police involved. And this is not the first time this company has done this. They did the
That's
same
nuts.
thing in Indiana. Same deal. Fan stabbed a wrestler as a work. Police and the town got involved, banned the company from ever coming back, and banned all pro wrestling events. I
That's
always try to
nuts.
give deathmatch companies benefit of the doubt because people do make money off of it. People do make their living on it, and everyone has the right to put food on their table, a roof
Yeah,
over their head, and
absolutely.
clothes on their back. But some of these companies are just pushing the envelope a little too far that they're going to ruin it for everyone.
Yeah, it's true. And, you know, you could tell it was selective too, because you could also just as easily say, oh, well, you know, a fan pulled up a gun on a wrestler, right? But you really can't do that because then indefinitely a police report would have to be made, right?
Yeah.
Indefinitely. You brought a firearm into a public, well, I shouldn't say public, but you know, you brought it into a private venue where the public can come, right? During an event. Like that's hard to dupe, but you tell someone, hey, they brought a knife. Okay, like you can dupe that easy. And obviously they had done it once before in Indiana. But you know, I genuinely think that this then makes it more difficult for places to host independent wrestling events. Granted, this organization doesn't even exist anymore after this, right? But now, what are other venues that want to host pro wrestling that would be great to, that have been great to host pro wrestling events, right? Are they left to do, right? Do they want to take that same liability at
I
that point?
think I think no one is going to book a deathmatch show for the longest time after this.
No,
I think
no way.
everyone already knows the risks that come in when you see fluorescent lights getting broken in the ring and
Oh yeah,
broken around people and glass shattering and thumbtacks and the staple guns and the fire on the table and the fire on
yep,
the table on the barbed wire. You just start to realize that maybe it's so much not the venue, it's just what kind of wrestling are we going to be bringing into our building.
yeah,
And if they see anything deathmatch related, they're probably not going to take it now.
no. Well, and I mean, at that same time, right? There's definitely places that lean into that kind of environment, right? And I think there always will be. The problem is, like, are those people that will pay money to have these, to host such an event, right? Because it's better to have a backer that is more established versus going in this one place where it might as well be like torn down, right? But just, and I mean, maybe they'll get away with it more down south, but why should they have to do that? Down south, I mean, really, down south, sure, they do also have an appreciation for pro wrestling. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I can
But
attest to that.
But I mean, they're not going to bring in nearly as much revenue as the Chicago wrestling scene. People make more money here. People spend more money on entertainment. Entertainment is one of Chicago's larger exports. So you have that. People genuinely, like there's more people here than there are down south, and the commute to do such, right? It's not like that commute element is almost non-existent. People don't care about commuting, and there's such large pockets of people where it's just not an issue. Meanwhile, you go down south, you have to drive like 10 miles just to go to your nearest wrestling event or whatever. It's not as metropolitan. It's more rural. So you have less people spending money, you have less people interested, you have less people seeing this show
Yeah, and the
versus
Chicago wrestling scene
Chicago.
is one of the most exposing scenes they can be a part of because you're going to get noticed.
Yep.
That's why a lot of people come up to the Chicago scene more so than going to, say, Asheville, North Carolina. Because once you get up to Chicago and work the Chicago scene for a little bit, some of those guys will end up being able to get down to OVW once they get their Kentucky license.
Right.
And
And
how weird is it that OVW just had a referee seizure incident in the ring, and now we've got a stabbing in Chicago, or a stabbing
yeah,
incident in
it's
Chicago.
very, very selective. It's just very selective. I think a lot of these independent companies are trying to find ways to stand out, right? They want to,
OVW stood out with the seizure. Oh, they
well,
stood
yeah.
out.
And I mean, it it begs the question, like, what's worth doing? Like, is your show really that bad? Or maybe not bad. Is your promoting that bad to where you can't sell this show, like, without making it controversial? Granted, wrestling right now is in this point where you have to make a controversial statement or something controversial has to happen in order for it to be relevant. Case in point, this whole dumb stuff, this dumb angle that the WWE is doing is so unbelievable.
Which one?
The stupid CM Punk Pat McAfee thing.
Um,
Like, it's so dumb. And they're trying to do it very last minute as we're going into WrestleMania and stuff, just to make like moments. But WrestleMania right now is really not built up that well. I will say though, Obafemi looks great.
I
Love
think that is
him,
it is a one match WrestleMania at this point. It is just Oba
dude.
and Brock. That's it.
Dude, he's so good. And I love that Brock is so open to, it looks like Brock is open to making him look really good. I mean, this might be Brock has made it public that he might be getting close to his last run. But you know, if if this is one of those pillars where Oba is going to go over as this powerhouse against Brock Lesnar, perfect guy to pick.
Oh
Easily
God,
perfect guy to
absolutely.
pick.
Remember back when we first started doing Heat Seeker when I said Oba is one of the next guys?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean,
I
you could
like
see it
going
in his
back to the old
face.
episodes and seeing how many predictions I got right.
Yeah, I know. No, you were able to tell. Now, and I mean, we have a couple of different like left turns with a lot of these guys. Everyone had thought Austin Theory was going to be a big deal, and he is like so irrelevant now.
No, he's one of those guys that he needs to stay in like a NXT style venue
Yeah.
or something like Full Sail
Yep.
because he's just one of those guys that when you work in a smaller venue, your bumps seem a lot bigger. Your cells are a lot bigger. When you're in a
Oh
giant
yeah.
venue like these arenas, some of these guys just don't know how to work to the nosebleeds. They know how to work to the third
No.
person in the crowd or the third row in the crowd.
Speaking of NXT, Tony D'Angelo is now
Dude,
the NXT champion. Great pick. Great moment.
Pow guy from Illinois.
Yep. Incredible guy. I mean, you couldn't pick a better, and I mean, he's got a great look,
He's got a
so
great character too.
awesome character. He's definitely, it seems like WWE might be leaning back into its roots when it comes to the visual aspects. I say that because it seems like they went out of their way to go after Will Hobbs, now Royce Keys, when he was getting close to making his way out uh, of AEW, and he looks great too. I mean, like he has always looked great. It's a shame that they didn't push further with him in AEW. However, I am concerned with WWE's build process and what intentions are made when acquiring someone. And I
At
think that's
this
a reasonable
point,
concern.
I think it's just one of those. We just want to have you under contract. We don't have any plan for you. We just want to have
Yeah.
you.
And I mean,
Like I was saying on our failed watch along, two companies extremely overinflated rosters. Guys
yeah.
are just grabbing people to have people, and WWE has so many different feeder systems now with WWE ID, Evolve. They're working with TNA. They got NXT. They got Raw, SmackDown.
The TNA agreement's
They
done
they
now.
got AAA now. They got AAA.
Yeah, they do have AAA. That was an interesting thing for them to acquire.
And the fact Undertaker was
TNA,
a big part of that, that's even more interesting.
yeah. Well, he has a great, Mark. His name's Mark Calloway, right? That's his
Yeah.
legal name and stuff. Mark Calloway, as a person, has always been interested in all the different facets of pro wrestling. Had maybe his career gone differently, he probably would have been all over the place, right?
He
But
probably would have been the spot that Triple H is in now.
he probably would be better in that spot. I mean, and I don't mean to like make that as a means of bashing Triple H. He's made he's made good calls, as anyone kind of does. Everyone who shoots at the dartboard will eventually make something, right?
Yeah, I mean,
But
he's called the game because he's been a student of the game since he started with
oh yeah,
Kowalski.
yep. He's but for me with Triple H as wasn't my favorite wrestler and stuff like that. We all have our picks. I like Undertaker over Triple H, but at that same time, I also think about just some of the decisions he has made, throughout his span, right? He's been
Well, he's
involved
also
with a
working
lot of
under
the
Nick
drama.
Khan. He's also
Yeah,
working
I
under
know,
Nick
Nick
Khan.
Khan.
So Nick Khan is saying like, all right, this is your idea. Well, let's change it because this is what I want.
Always. It's insane. TKO is an organization. I mean, it is burning, 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 burning. Oh my God, this White House show, that's going to be so bad. And Ronda Rousey even knows it's going to be a bad card.
I mean, Ronda Rousey's Ronda Rousey. My only favorite
I
thing about her is when Holly Holm kicked her face.
Yeah, that was awesome. That
Yeah, I
that was
won
a great fight.
$500 off of that.
Did you actually? That's
Oh
awesome.
yeah, oh yeah. You
Like,
could
I'm
just
not
tell
a
going
huge,
into it, Holly was going to win.
yeah. Oh yeah. Ronda was and she was on her kind of like her downward trend in regards to some of the fights she had had. You could tell her conditioning was off and stuff. But
She got complacent with that armbar.
yeah,
That's what did
yep,
her
yep,
in.
yep, yeah. And I
But back
mean,
to but back to WWE and TKO.
yeah,
How
it's a
crazy is
dumpster
it
fire.
that you got four people from the Attitude Era now calling the shots? You got The Rock on the board with TKO. You got
Yep,
Triple H in WWE. You got Shawn Michaels running NXT. Now you got Undertaker, who's the liaison with AAA.
yep.
Now you just need to get Stone Cold, Mick Foley, Chris
Yeah,
Jericho,
right. I,
give Bret
you
Hart
know,
something to do.
yeah, give Bret Hart something to do. Unfortunately, if you give a guy like Bret Hart something to do,
He's
he
gonna go
will,
off on Goldberg.
yeah, well, he's going to go off on Goldberg and he's going to find a reason to complain. You got a guy like CM Punk who does like the same thing. Give him
Yeah, but that's
something, he'll
what Punk's
always
been doing
something.
since he was on the Indies. That's been his
It's
character.
ridiculous. Ridiculous. He is, I mean, such a like dweeb in that sense. He always has something to complain about. He just has a great way of complaining.
He's like Deadpool. He's a fourth wall breaking person.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. And that's why a lot of these guys like him. And I mean, more power to you. I liked CM Punk during that. I was there for Money in the Bank 2011. That was my first pro wrestling show. And what a cool moment. But what sucked was I didn't understand the entirety of it until I got home and I realized he literally was about to leave and stuff. I was so young at the time, but you know, he at that time was awesome. He was on fire. But after that, Vince really didn't want to do much with him. I mean, you could tell there was like intention to how bookings were made,
Yeah, and
that
at that
sort of
time,
thing.
with how PG WWE was
Oh, it was so
in
bad.
that era,
Yeah.
CM Punk stood out because he was extremely different than what was being presented.
Well, and he
And
was
that's why more people
presenting a lot of it,
gravitated to him.
and he was saying what other people were thinking,
Mhm.
in regards to whether you were a spectator or whether you were a wrestler backstage and stuff. You were just like, this product sucks. Like, I don't like this. And I
Yeah.
know a lot of people don't like this. Why are we doing it? And those kinds of things speak volumes to people. That is what creates those like the magnetism behind a dramatic moment. It's when it resonates with like a lot of different people.
hmm I think it's part of the wrestling world. You always do these cycles. You go PG, attitude, character base, comic booky,
Yep.
to reality, back to PG, attitude, and it's just a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're at that point of where they're in between attitude and PG, and they're trying to walk that fine line right
And it's
now.
reasonable for them to do that, as much as there's like a displeasure of the PG era of the WWE in the pinnacle of it, in the peak of what it was, they made a lot of money.
Oh God,
And
yeah.
those are those kinds of things that you can't deny. They made like a ton of money by playing it safe. And it's reasonable to do that. But then there's like this sacrifice of quality. You end up like running into a rut. You can't attract new fans. It's very hard to attract new fans because you limit it to the kind of entertainment that it is. But now it's starting to, it's starting to get a little bit of its edge here and there.
Yeah, like Raw being on Netflix, you think that'd make it a little edgier. You already got Cody Rhodes to say, go fuck yourself to The Rock, but
Yep.
nothing else has really come of that. So you want to try and keep it family friendly to make your dollar
Yeah.
back. But with your ticket prices, you're probably not going to make your dollar back.
Now these ticket prices are bad. These ticket prices are really bad. I feel like they're basing it on what Saudi Arabia pays, like what their spectators pay. And they're like, well, guys, clearly the value is there. People will pay for it. Even though the people of like Dubai and like all those different places have a crazy net income. Those that go and they go to events and stuff, they have a crazy amount of like disposable income. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
here we're struggling to get by. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, we're both working 2 jobs right now.
it's like insanity. Like no one like is paying thousands of dollars to go to these shows. Actually, I mean, hard pause. It's not as if nobody is paying these prices, right? Because they're no matter what, you're going to have these mega fans that'll go into debt for WWE, right?
Yeah,
But at
but
the
how many
same
of these
time,
tickets are being comped now?
yeah, I know. I can't even believe it. AEW does the same thing with comp tickets when they know a show's not being filled up, right?
Yeah.
But like, I mean, when you're comping a ticket that you're valuing at thousands of dollars, right? Begs the question as to whether or not it's actually worth thousands of dollars, right? Like
No,
you
because
can't,
Vince kept the tickets reasonable because
yeah,
he wanted to keep it family friendly and keep it affordable to the fans. Pay-per-views, now those tickets would go up because it's a pay-per-view,
right,
but your TV shows and your house shows, those were very reasonable.
yeah. And they should be. You're trying to pack the house, right? Like you're
Yeah.
trying to make it a lively thing. And I mean, we've seen when, certain shows weren't booked very like high volume and stuff like that. I think like with the quality of what WWE brings to their television programs, ticket prices should not be that high.
Yeah.
Considering like, and I mean, AEW at the very least, their pricing is fine, but that's only because the venues that they book for television aren't these like large scale.
Yeah, they're your minor league arena. They're your minor team arenas.
Like the Now Arena is pretty solid. I think they should continue to go to the Now Arena. It looks way better than the Wintrust Arena. I think they just like the idea of it being in Chicago.
Yeah.
But the Now Arena is just so much more well equipped. The audience looks good. Like the seats fill nicely. I think they gotta just go there like all the
Yeah.
time. It's also more convenient for me. I like driving there versus driving downtown.
Yeah, I mean, that
But
drive used to be convenient for me. I just never went.
yeah, right. I think that and WWE still does their shows at the Allstate Arena, which I'm going to later tonight to watch the Wolves game, but they still do their shows at the Allstate Arena. However, okay, funny little thing, those hockey games, the Wolves games, they host like theme days and stuff. I've now been to like 2 or 3 different AEW nights, which I always find really interesting. Like you have this, I mean, I suppose that it's not as if WWE has like a preferred partnership, right? It's not as if they can't do stuff like that. So I'm thinking to myself, right, could we then look at potentially an AEW show hosted at the Allstate Arena? To me, I think that would be interesting
I
because we've
don't.
seen,
I don't
I
think
don't
it could
know,
happen.
I don't know because AEW and WWE have hosted at like the same venues before, right? Like current, and I mean like current, right? I don't know if there is such a preferred partnership agreement thing where like
There, there,
who is to say
there might be because I know back when
I
WCW was around, WWF got Allstate, WCW got United Center.
right, that's true. But here's the thing, right? both AEW and WWE have hosted a show, not a pay-per-view, but they've hosted a show at the United Center within a 2-year something span, right? They also have both hosted a show in a couple of different areas, but mostly that's rural areas where they don't have a lot of venues to begin with, right?
Yeah, they got one arena.
Yeah, they got one arena that they do shows in and stuff. It's one of those things where it does beg the question of whether or not it can happen. There, with Chicagoland, it's cool that they don't have to do that, right? Because
Mm.
there's so many venues. They even went to the Argonne Ballroom, which I thought was really cool. AEW went to the Argonne Ballroom, which that venue was prominent in the old school indie scene. I think ECW used to do shows there when they would come to Chicago and whatever. But it's a cool, and when they did that, when they did a I forget what they call that, like a residency or whatever, where they do multiple shows.
Yeah, it's like what they do in Vegas.
So cool. That was such a good idea because they really played to the arena. When you do that, I feel like there's like a good connection when you play to what's available and you make it really cool. I think like someone jumped off one of the balconies and stuff like that. And that kind of thing is cool. That stands out.
Yeah, I mean, that was always what ECW did, was jump off a balcony. Always New
Yeah.
Jack are super crazy.
Oh yeah. Almost always New Jack. New Jack was like insane. A lot of them were.
Yeah.
Sabu was nuts,
Yeah.
We were talking about working out the other day and stuff and talking about reflecting on when you were using gear and stuff like that. And you even spoke recently on another podcast. What was that podcast called? The
Tables, ladders, and chatter.
Tables, Ladders, and Chatter.
It's a great name.
That's a creative name. That was really cool. So tell me a little bit about what prompted that conversation on when you used gear and stuff, and what was like the depth of what you were going through at that time.
Well, so I started using, I mean, I don't want to call it steroids. It was like the foundation of what you use before you start taking steroids.
Okay.
But like, you remember when we were at Elmhurst, every 6 months, I would change up what I was taking.
That's nuts.
Like
That's crazy.
do you remember when we would go to the LA Fitness by the gym and I would take that Before Mix and I would just like start sweating profusely when we get back?
Yes.
Yeah. So
that's crazy.
Dude, I remember when that kept happening. It's like, I can't take that stuff anymore.
No.
But this stuff, I wasn't so much feeling the same thing, but I just kind of got a little loopy with it. I got a little too dependent on it because I was at work and I was just feeling exhausted all the time. I remember we went through a live burn and I couldn't even force a door open.
Oh my God.
I was like, dude, am I getting weak? Is the stuff I take just not working? I don't think it's working anymore. I couldn't even force a door in front of 2 departments. I look like the fucking shits.
That sucks.
Yeah, so I was like, all right, maybe the stuff I'm taking just isn't working anymore. Now it's time for me I'm at the point of where I gotta switch it up now.
Yeah.
As I do, I don't know what to do because everything at GNC I've taken, everything at the vitamin shop I've taken.
Right.
And I was just feeling like a zombie all the time. I was feeling weak, and still had some connections into the wrestling world and out of it. So I was like, hey, these are the problems I'm having. What do you suggest I do? Because nothing's working. Like, here you go. Take this, get these energy pills, get this pre-workout, get this amino, get this whey or protein shake, and here's the gear.
Wow.
And so I got all that. I think mixing it all together is what really did me in.
Oh my God.
Because I'd also spasmed my left lat and my left deltoid.
Jeez.
So I think that's what was making me feel like a zombie. Because my friend Jess said, like, yeah, you were injured. That's why you were feeling like that, because your body was still trying to heal from it. Even though you weren't spasming, you were still trying to heal. It probably just didn't click with you yet.
Right. So give me an idea. So based on like what you're taking, right? So pre-gear, you were taking like probably creatine, like you probably had a pretty solid-esque stack, like creatine, maybe something to boost testosterone, things like that. And then after that, what kind of like when we're talking about gear and performance enhancing drugs, like what was the stack at that point? Because you mentioned protein, you mentioned you didn't mention creatine, but I can only assume.
No, I had creatine. That came with the protein shake.
Yeah. Oh, those are usually pretty good proteins. And I usually tell people like, hey, you want the best bang for your buck typically, but if you want to minimize, because supplements, I've learned that, the supplement industry, one is bonk, right? Like it's overpriced powders and pills and stuff like
You
that.
also
And
don't
they
know
don't,
what all is in there. It's not
yep,
regulated. Not everything on the ingredients bottle is every ingredient in there.
it's
And
awful.
everyone's body's different. Not everyone's going to have the same reaction. I can tell.
Yeah, they've needed to, in this time period especially, right?
Yeah.
When you have people taking things like peptides and all this stuff, and people making these crazy, outlandish claims. Like, and you know what, right now I'm a health professional and I have to tell people my basic thoughts on these kinds of things, right? And I always try to have like people's safety as well as people's trust in mind. So I'm not the guy that's going to go to the gym and be like, take these peptides because the peptides are going to heal you, or the peptides are going to do this. And oh, take ashwagandha because it's going to do this.
Yeah, I probably should have gone to you before getting on any of that gear. I feel
Dude,
like that would have been like the big hang on, Colin. Just rest like another 2 or 3 weeks. You'll feel great. Don't do any of this shit.
there's a girl that I'm not going to name names, but there was a girl I worked with. She's probably not going to listen to this. She doesn't like pro wrestling.
No.
But she is someone who competed in women's physique bodybuilding, or no, bikini, which there's a distinction. She competed in bikini bodybuilding, and she was telling me how she would do, juice and stuff, and like you don't think of bikini as being something where you juice up and stuff like that. Okay, one, she was injecting herself with L-carnitine. I hate that practice so much where people feel like they want to mainline their sups. I'm like,
Yeah, that was one of the
guys,
subs I was taking when I was on the gear, but it was the
L
pill. It wasn't the injection.
L-carnitine, I'll tell you this from experience, right? If you get legitimate L-carnitine, one, the liquid's better, in my opinion. I've seen better results drinking the liquid with food. So you have to take a lot of these supplements should like more often than not, you want to take them with food because when you take them on an empty stomach, your body just doesn't want them anymore. But if you take
Yeah,
it with
I was
food,
taking it all on an empty stomach. So,
oof.
yeah.
I used to do that and it would make, and like when you do it with food, typically like something fiber-esque heavy, like some people do. Do you remember when people used to say that if you drink grape juice with your creatine, it's going to work better or whatever?
No,
Oh,
never
it's
heard
such a
that.
stupid rumor. It's such a stupid one. A lot of it has to do with just sugar in general, right? When you consume something that maybe has a little bit more sugar or something like that, fiber, sugar, carbs, and you take like any kind of supplement, you're doing it as intended. Like your body almost thinks that you are consuming food that has these things versus just something that's pure something or other, like we don't drink like vanilla extract,
No.
right? When we want the taste of vanilla, we put vanilla extract in something and then we consume it. So we have to think of supplements in that same light where we don't take the supplement alone, we take it with something so that it all goes together. But back to like this girl, she was doing injectable L-carnitine. That was one thing. But then she was taking, kid you not, she was on this crazy, crazy, crazy diet where she's barely eating anything. She's like eating dates and peanut butter and garbage. And she was taking Winstrol. And I'm like, why are you taking Winstrol? Which, for people that don't know, Winstrol is like it's a steroid or whatever. I don't take these things, so I really just don't. I know of Winstrol because I know people get hurt on stuff like that. And she was like, well, I'm at a major caloric deficit and I need to maintain the muscle because my ass is looking like a pancake and I need to keep working out. So she's taking Winstrol and like barely eating. And her excuse to it when I kind of combated it was just, well, I'm only taking half and stuff. And I'm like, you are like a bird right now, and you're taking like something, half of something that is meant for like a bull. What are you doing? She had a trainer too. Her trainer told her while she was on her cut, like, that you're done with your cut. Now come off, now start eating. Didn't do it, didn't listen to her. I'm like, oh my God. And I had thought that her trainer, because it was a major IFBB person, I had thought that her trainer was telling her to do the Winstrol. No, she went out of her way to buy the Winstrol and take it. So she didn't have any instruction on doing this. She just started taking it. And
Yeah, the only
like,
instructions I had for
that
my stuff was
infuriates me.
if the instructions I got was take it every 3 days, work out every three
Oh
days
my
with this stuff.
God.
So you can kind of see how I got loopy and mentally all over the place. Like I saw in Tables, Ladders, and Chatters, I was north, south, west, eastbound, and down.
Oh my
And
God.
dude, like I had no patience for anything. Like, dude, I stopped cooking because I just had no patience to cook. To where when I'd had those
Sucks.
drops, I would have to have delivery or I'd have to go get takeout just so I could eat something because I had no patience. Alongside of that, I had a no no awareness of my surroundings at times. I essentially went from being in the confidence pool at SeaWorld, dolphin jumping into the ego pool at SeaWorld
Oh
like a
God.
dolphin. And like, right as I started being ego driven with it, people would say like, hey, you look bigger than you did when you wrestled, which flipped the wrestling switch back on because I still hadn't come to
Right.
terms with my retirement. And I started carrying myself again like I was in the wrestling business, which does
Right.
not translate well to outside and to people that have no understanding to it. So, like I said, dude, like my brain was just all over the place. My levels would drop. I would get agitated easily at times, had no patience for it. And I was just all over the fucking place, dude. And noticed this was a problem and I got off of it. My friend Jenny actually was around me before I started taking it. Then once I started taking it, she knew something was weird. So she just stopped talking to me. Then once we started talking again, she actually brought up the bookshelf for me to start making the library. I asked her, hey, did you listen to the
Oh.
podcast? She's like, yeah, I did listen to it. It actually explains a lot. You know,
Ah.
I can see that you've changed and gone back to how you were before it. And I felt really vindicated when she said that. It's like, yeah, you probably should never do that again. Just stick with doing yoga at this point. It's so much better for you. You don't need the gym.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that
So
withdrawal did suck. Getting off all that
what?
did suck.
Well, yeah. What steroid or what performance enhancing drug were you taking?
I don't want to put it out there, but I did send you
That's
the
fine.
picture of it.
Oh, did
But
you?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. No, I remember. I remember.
yeah.
Yeah, you did send me it.
That
No,
was
that's
just
fair.
one. That was just one of the things I was taking. I
One
didn't send you
of
everything because I threw
That's
everything
nuts.
out after I took those pictures and sent it to my friend Jessica. I threw all that shit out.
The performance enhancing, like before it was very faux pas and very niche. And unfortunately, we're in a time period in the fitness industry where people almost feel vindicated for taking means of performance, I guess, performance slash image enhancing drugs. Now with GLP-1s, people are using that to lose weight without any formal guidance from someone. I think if you have to take that, like this is just me talking, right? You don't necessarily need to get a personal trainer. I don't think everyone necessarily needs to get a personal trainer or a nutritionist, right? But the problem is a doctor should be guiding you during this kind of experience because the weight loss is dramatic, but only because GLP-1s, Ozempic, Wegovy, whatever, they're all the same GLP-1. These drugs have a catabolic effect on the body, meaning it is eating, one, it acts as an appetite suppressant, but two, because of the lack of nutrients that your body is receiving, it is deteriorating. If you aren't someone that has muscle to you, your muscle starts to deteriorate as well as your body fat. And it's not this it's awesome for people who are genuinely overweight to the point where it is almost like a form of disability, right? Like they cannot do things for themselves. So I'm all for someone doing it and then being able to make a lifestyle change because it's easier for their body to do it. But these people that are doing it with no plan in mind, with no guidance, end up hurting themselves really bad because all they're doing, they are not changing anything about themselves and they're taking it. So they lose the weight and they think to themselves, well, I have to keep taking it now in order
Yeah, I
to
mean,
keep
I
the
had
weight
no guidance
off.
with my stuff.
It's scary. And this is the position that a lot of people are in. They will take things like steroids, they'll take things like hormone therapies and stuff, and they'll take things like GLP-1s and they'll have no guidance and it will lead to people hurting themselves. I had a
That's
client,
me.
not a gym member named John. John's a really nice guy, awesome guy, a little bit overweight, right? So he says to himself, I really want to start taking a GLP-1 to lose the weight and stuff. I'm like, yeah, no, John, go for it. Do what you got to do. And I asked, are you going to get it? Or did you get it prescribed from your doctor? He said, no, I'm doing it through the HIMS. And I'm like, okay, just be careful and stuff. It is an actual prescription. A doctor is filing it for you, but they're just not asking you about your medical history, so you have to be careful. And he's like, yeah, they didn't prescribe me with the GLP-1 right away. They actually had me taking this stuff first. And then I look at the drugs that he got prescribed and I asked him, I'm like, do you have like depression and stuff? He's like, well, no. I'm like, okay, why did they prescribe you with Wellbutrin? He's like, which one is Wellbutrin? I'm like, the Bopurion, that's the generic form or the generic name for Wellbutrin. And he's like, well, what's Wellbutrin? I'm like, it's a antidepressant that's not an SSRI. I know all this stuff because I take mental health medication, unfortunately. I see a psychiatrist regularly. But I used to take Wellbutrin, and Wellbutrin they use because it boosts your energy a little bit too. But you have to be careful because you can't drink anything caffeinated, and you have to be careful if you have like certain heart conditions, right? So I asked John, I'm like, hey, you really do got to be careful, and you have to have a good understanding of what it is that you're taking. Did you ask this doctor what this was? Because and sure enough, right, then he starts taking the Wegovy and whatever because they prescribe it to him later. He was like, yeah, this is like a process. They have you take this first and then you take this. I'm like, I don't know the rhyme or reason of why this is even happening. He takes the Wegovy. Apparently, he ends up taking it with other things. All of a sudden, I don't see him for a little bit, and then he comes back. He's like, "Yeah, I had a little bit of a scare." I'm like, "Okay, when you say that, what do you mean?" He's like, "So, for a couple days, I was just feeling faint, not feeling too good." I was like, "Well, were you eating?" He's like, "Yeah, I was eating." I'm like, "Okay." And then he was like, all of a sudden, my heart was racing and I was feeling dizzy. And yeah, I ended up staying at the hospital and stuff. I'm like, oh my God. And then he scheduled a follow-up appointment with his actual general practitioner. He said, all right, well, I'm going to need you to stop doing the hymn and don't only get prescriptions through me because you messed up really bad. You took things knowing you had like a heart condition and stuff like that. And this is the thing, this is the tell. they don't ask you these things when you do something like a hymns.
Yeah, it's a profit deal. They don't care. They just want to make their money.
That's all for part 1 of this episode of the Heat Seeker podcast. Be sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you listen to your podcasts. Follow our Facebook page to find the latest pro wrestling news. Thank you for listening to the Heat Seeker podcast.